independent all-girls school, Ashley Hall has developed an initiative focused on teaching students the importance of civil discourse. Today, I talk one-on-one with the head of Ashley Hall, Jill Muti, for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Jill Muti, welcome to the award-winning Quintin's Close-Ups.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me, Quintin. It's really an honor to be able to talk to you today.
Likewise, obviously you are the head of Ashley Hall, which is really right down the street here where I'm sitting.
Well, I'm trying to wear school colors today. They're purple and white. So
yes, indeed.
Put one in for those Panthers.
Absolutely. And I know that obviously you have been the head of that particular school since 2004. And obviously Ashley Hall is an all-girls independent private school with a boarding program here in downtown Charleston. It was founded in 1909 by Mary Varin McBee, who headed the institution for many years. It is the only all-girls independent private school in the state of South Carolina. Let me ask you this, Jill. What's new? What's now at Ashley Hall?
Oh, wow. Well, I think that I wonder sometimes in education if there's anything that's really new, right? I mean, I think of T.S. Eliot's Four Quartets and the end is my beginning kind of deal. And I think that there's a lot to it. If we take a look at our mission, the mission of the school that Mary Vardreen really started the school was to produce independent, ethically responsible women who were ready to meet the challenges of society with confidence. So when you take a look at that mission and you think what that must have looked like in 1909, pre-19th Amendment, pre-suffragist movement, the whole nine yards, and then what that means today, obviously things are really different, and yet the role of women in our society and what it means to be a confident female leader and working in society has changed. So, or developed further. So, I think what's different for us at Ashley Hall is obviously we have leaned into STEM and STEAM courses for our girls in math and science, and still have a very rich program around languages and humanities. And girls weren't playing athletics back in 1909, but we've got Title IX, and so many things have changed, I guess.
Yes, ma'am. You talk about obviously confidence that is in women's leader. What is your confidence now that you are a leader?
Oh, wow. It's really interesting. I mean, in my own journey through education, I really came up through the ranks in a co-educational environment, and most administrators around the administrative table were men. And I had some wonderful male mentors. So, if I'm in the position I am today, it's because of working with wonderful, wonderful human beings. I think that what took me by surprise right away was the dynamic shift when I came to Ashley Hall around being with women who had strong ideas and opinions and weren't afraid to share them in a very respectful way. Right. And they were diligent about action, about doing. And I think that that's something that has been a strain that has gone through our school from its inception. And I'm very proud that it continues today. And of course has had a huge impact on me and my leadership since I came to Ashley Hall.
Yeah, 2004, gosh, those are the golden years. But let me ask you this, because that brings me to my next, question in regards to the statement of obviously civil discourse. You said this, quote, "It is critical for our students to be able to navigate the challenges of a complicated world." What are those challenges locally?
Well, I think we have to really talk about in this particular case, just for children in secondary school, the importance of social emotional learning and how we live in community. And if we're going to live in community, what it means to foster a sense of belonging and relationships. And to really do that, we have to think about how we help children navigate their world and learn from others.
Sure.
So, the whole concept of civil discourse, which was already baked into the DNA of our school, what we've really just tried to do is brush it off and make it really relevant for the girls today. So for our little girls, it might be in responsive classroom, how to be compassionate and empathetic.
Sure.
To those around us. I mean, let's face it, right now, living during this pandemic, the need to be sensitive to others around us, and we don't know really where the virus is. We know how to protect ourselves, but what does that look like? And then as the girls get older and they are struggling with how to engage purposefully, and they're developing their own ideas, how do you strengthen that sense of self and give that confidence, and yet at the same time really fostering understanding of others? And how do we have conversations that don't make things personal and yet give space for other people's ideas? And I think this is a relevant skill set, always has been, but is even more so today.
And that may bring me to my next question. How does your school embrace honesty, responsibility, integrity with the students?
So, I think, firstly, we do live under an honor code, and we have these hallmarks, our 7 hallmarks. And of course, they play out, we start at the age of 2 and go through that full secondary cycle. So what it might look like for a 6-year-old is very different for someone who's 15 or 16.
Sure.
I'm sorry, could you ask me the question again? Because I was starting and then I...
Oh, no worries. No worries at all. I know you were talking about the honors code at Ashley Hall. How does your school embrace honesty, responsibility, and integrity with those students?
Okay, so I think, what we're trying to do is create a loving culture where the children really get to know themselves.
Sure.
And if they can be honest with themselves, and they can find a way to trust themselves, then we can also find a way for us to trust others and create a community where we're really living by a code that respects everyone. And this comes with practice, you think of a 2-year-old who doesn't want to share their toys. How do you help them learn to share their toys? Yes. It's the same thing as we get older. Fostering this sense of responsibility. I say all the time, in fact, the girls probably are tired of hearing me say it, but with freedom comes responsibility. It comes with responsibility for self and a responsibility for those who are around us. And so we really try to build a purposeful program that gives the girls many opportunities to practice this.
And right now, what type of ideas are you all discovering and fostering?
Well, obviously, I think what's really important right now, especially, is to make their learning not only vibrant, but relevant to the world in which they live.
Sure.
So yes, our 7th and 8th graders, they all take Latin and Greek. But what do they learn through the myth of the ancients? And
Sure.
Are they really so different from the narrative that we're seeing on television today, or are the broad themes the same? What can we learn from them? So I think, it's always a constant form of reflection when we try to get the children to think about their education and how it's relevant in whatever they're doing, whether it's Algebra 2 or it's an economics lesson or a history lesson.
Mm-hmm. Algebra, ooh, hard. Let me ask you this. How do you develop a reflective classroom community?
I think, part of this civil discourse statement is it. the girls, when administrators and faculty kind of brushed this off and introduced it to our community at large, we had the girls spend a good amount of time with the discourse statement and really created guidelines for how they would want their classroom to run. And they came up with, 13, 14 fairly simple points. But what it did is it really created this space for themselves and each other and kind of a rubric to follow when they were in class. And I think that that's been really helpful.
Yes, ma'am. And what is that ideal classroom contract?
I think it's making space for other learners and giving yourself the opportunity to hear others, but also be heard.
Yeah.
And fostering that sense of community. So, some of the things that the girls have asked is, let's keep the discussion between those who are in the room. Try not to change others' opinions, but you can change your own. Sarcasm and mockery and passive aggression aren't appropriate in a classroom. These are coming from the girls. Try not to interrupt. Let people finish what they're saying before you start to talk.
Right.
So that no one is misunderstood. So these are kind of very simple principles on one hand, but they're very profound, right?
Yes, ma'am. And let me ask you this. What opportunities are provided for student reflection? I know I might be redundant.
So I think with our learning in general, for all of us, great reflective practice to make meaning and sense of what we're learning is important. And we can do that in many ways. We can do it through writing and writing assignments, or we can do it through we have something called oral defense projects where the girls need to be able to speak about their ideas sort of on their feet rather than having to write them out. But it's all a form of reflection and making meaning of our world, which I think is important.
And let me ask you this. I know the girls probably have journals that they write in all the time. How will those journals that is, be evaluated with this particular statement of civil discourse?
So, I think the journaling that the girls do, it depends on the role that it plays in each individual classroom. For the majority of the time, I'd say 90% of the time, I'm sure the faculty are reading the journal entries to make sure that the girls are processing something, but that they've actually written something, but is not necessarily the point of those reflections is not to judge. As the girls get older, and they're having to make sense of different material, and they're having to find a way to synthesize those ideas. There's a very big difference between synthesizing the ideas of others and then having your own idea around that synthesis, right? So developing those skills are really important before they go to university, and we try to give them many opportunities to do that.
And what is the approach to establish a safe space for sensitive topics?
I think it varies, again, by age level. Sure. And how relevant the topic is to the lesson at hand and why it's coming up. And it becomes safe when it is relevant and it makes sense to the topic of whatever is being talked about, I think. And the faculty realizing how difficult it is for young people to be vulnerable. I mean, it is for adults, so how do we lean into those conversations as adults? I think we could all stand to practice a little bit more.
Indeed. And let me ask you this, how do you build a silent conversation?
I think by really listening.
That's great. And I know this is something that I should probably ask one of the teachers, but how do you implement those effective teaching strategies?
Well, I think you have to kind of have a really good broad sense of where you're trying to go, right? And then leave enough room for investigation and creativity along the way to understand what the children are actually learning and how they're making sense of their world. So I think having a good plan about why you're doing what you're doing and where you want that class to be at the end of the session is really important.
And how do you help the students appreciate the viewpoints, talents, and contributions, that is, of a less voiced member of the classroom?
So I really think it's about making space. We've all been in situations where we'll be in conversations around the dinner table of someone that will sort of control the dialogue or has the most to say, and it's really easy to kind of sit back, right? But part of what's so special, I think, about our school is that we want every girl to be independent and confident. And that means that we really strive to make sure that those voices are heard and that they get practice, just like the girls that have more confidence already, And so that's partially the job of the faculty, and it's also partially the job of peers, to understand where someone is with something, because you might have it one day where you're just a chatty Cathy and have a lot to say about something, right? And then the next day, the topic is different, or you're trying to wrap your head around it a different way, and you're the silent one. So
yes, indeed. And I know this might be another complicated question, but in what way should meaningful connections between current events, that is, and the curriculum happen?
I think it depends on the course, right? But whenever we can tie what we're doing and help them make meaning of the world in which we live, I think it's really important that it's not just an exercise out of a book, but that they can see how something is practically applied. And all of a sudden, I mean, that's where the magic happens, right? It's magical when they can make sense of the world that way.
Yes, ma'am. And I know obviously you all are creating a formal social discourse statement, and which is an overt way to articulate the work that has already been done at school and as the fundamental part of your mission. What would that mission be 5 years from now?
The school was started in 1909, so 111 years, our mission hasn't changed. So I think the beauty of the mission is that it really stands the test of time. Of course, so in 5 years, I think it will be interesting to see the challenges of our globe and what relevant shifts need to be made to create independent, ethically responsible women,
And what shift should be happening right now?
Well, I think that's a complicated question, right? I mean, in the sense that our school in general has always really produced women who are confident and who are independent. but if you take a look at the larger landscape in terms of what's happening in our country today, really owning that confidence and independence, and thinking about how they live purposeful lives and that are actionable. So, I think it's not enough just to, have an opinion about something, but what are you actually going to do about it? And so that actionable piece is really important, whether we're talking about sustainability, whether we're talking about, the major challenges of our world right now.
Right now. And what exactly do you want the girls to walk away from when they have obviously taken a hold of this particular course?
I really want them to own themselves. And what I mean by that is I want them to be not afraid to be curious about their world, to be purposeful about the world they live in, to know that it's okay to deepen their understanding but still make mistakes, that there's going to be blind spots. I want them to know how important it is to love, and that it can be scary.
Yes.
But when we really sort of lean into the work and the world we're living in, that kind of passion will resonate and will always enrich their lives.
Yeah. Let me ask you this too, Jill. What more have you learned about civil discourse now that this has been implemented, obviously, with Ashley Hall?
I'm not so sure I learned anything new, but I think by creating a conscious awareness, again, with our faculty and administrators and the girls, it's allowed space and conversation that has been very helpful, I think, for the girls and for faculty and parents alike.
Sure. Oh, yes. And what will be the next steps and mission for Ashley Hall going forward 5-10 years from now?
I think it's going to be really important as we envision the world that we live in, that there's a kind of nimbleness and creativity around change and cultural shifts, and embracing that, and that's exciting to me, and I think to many around us. I mean, if you take a look at what we've lived through the last year, and I think we all hope that there are major shifts and changes that will resonate for us and our communities. And education is no different when you think of this technology, just what you and I are doing today.
Yes.
And how that's going to continue to change and frame up what education looks like in the future. I don't think it will ever replace in-person instruction and love and care that we give to one another when we're in a very specific kind of community. And yet it opens up different kinds of worlds and opportunities for experiences by being able to use technology. So that's just a small example, but there's so much more. So I envision, I can't, I just think it's going to be a wonderful ride.
Right. Yes, indeed. And, obviously, Ashley Hall is sitting just a few streets, about 3 blocks down the street here from where I am on St. Philip Street. But obviously, the community has changed around Ashley Hall. What is your view of that?
So I think it's really interesting, right? If you look at the population across the United States and where folks are moving and the reasons why they're moving. And Charleston is an absolute beautiful town.
Yes.
It holds our nation's history, and is in many ways at least the peninsula itself reflects the beginning of our nation, and what very few cities in our country have the same sort of rich heritage. I think place is really important. And I think when people are moving in, obviously they enjoy the sunshine and the weather and the beach and our coast and so many other things that make this specific place so beautiful. And I think that they're also, what we're seeing here at Ashley Hall is they're very interested in being part of a community, and being able to live together, in a different way. And so I think it's our job to not only welcome them, but be inclusive and get them involved in the life of our city and in the work that we're trying to do. And I'm excited by that. And we enjoy, of course, a rich heritage and legacy of so many alumni and their children. And we're so glad always to have them apply to the school. But it's also wonderful to have this rich sense of movement and change for, I think, our state and our city as well.
How does Ashley Hall deal with this growth, with smart growth?
I'm assuming you're talking about admission in
Yes,
general.
ma'am.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So I think, firstly, an admission cycle is no longer, what it looked like when I came in 2004. It's a 12-month cycle now. What's really interesting is if I take a look at our new families from during the pandemic, I mean, literally we had 30 new families who came to our school without ever stepping foot on campus. So that in and of itself says a lot. It says a lot about our school, but it also says a lot about technology and the way people are thinking about, what they're learning and what they value to some degree. Right now, I don't see any great difference in terms of our admission practices regarding new folks coming into our community. I mean, we try to really value each child and as they come to us and that family and the contribution that they'll make to our school community. And I really want it to be that a welcoming, warm place that you just wish every girl could go to. Yeah. I mean, that's the way I sort of feel about it. And I know it probably is a little bit idealistic, but at the base level, I mean, educating a child is a contract really of love and care. And so you want every family that comes to Ashley Hall to feel that from us.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, the Honorable Jill Muti, thank you so much for your time. And again, welcome to the award-winning Quintin's Close-Ups.
Well, I'm just so honored to be a part of it. It's so cool.
Yes, ma'am. You're very welcome. Anytime you want to do an interview, just let me know.
Okay. Thank you, Quintin. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.